I thought I'll do a series of sessions. We did this year on International Women's 2020, and then we have been in touch in Genetics, led by Shalini. Where there are lots of questions, we decided to break it down into 3 sessions. First, more around investment planning. Second, tax planning and so-called fear of missing out. And 6 being at an all-time high, and of course, it is as we see it every day. This third session, however, it is about investing globally in India and what are the measures of investing globally and what are the precautions to be taken, put in cash and take out cash. So on the call, I have the Ingenitus team led by Shalini. She's a woman entrepreneur. Like I keep telling in the previous sessions, she's managed to carve quite an identity for herself and even fund her vacations through the investments and returns that she has. So over to you, Shalini. And I also have Preeti from Ingenitus on the call. She is going to take care of the chat window, so she may be posting some message and a link in case you wish to continue association with their team in independent capacity. Then you can reach out to them. I can always bridge in terms of any contacts required, and you can continue. And for the record, now I am a formal customer to Ingenitus as well. So if there's anybody asking why I'm doing the session, am I myself enrolled in their programs or not? Yep. So the answer is definitely yes. Okay, so once again, welcome everyone. Shalini, over to you.
Thank you, Mohit, for that very kind introduction. Thank you, everybody at Microsoft India, for joining us into this third session titled Vidya, a financial awareness program series for the corporate India employees. Yes, we talked in the first 2 sessions on Sensex at 3,000. That was one of the most exciting sessions we covered. And it was very relevant. It was inevitable from the feedback that we received from all of you. We also covered tax planning, which was a very prominent goal for all of you. It seems Microsoft India employees are paying an abnormal amount of taxes in government and are keen on reducing these taxes. The third and final session that we would be covering today is going to be global investing. It's again one of the most sought after financial topics in financial circles. Whenever I am speaking in business meetings or in forums, I am always quizzed about this one topic, that should I invest globally as well? Global funds are so common and so heard of now. Tell us how to get into them. Welcome everyone to this session. Preeti, I would request you to circulate the attendance sheet in case you haven't done that. We'll be circulating the attendance sheet a couple of times during this session. I will request anybody who is not so to do it. It's going to be helpful in customizing content, future financial awareness programs, as well as in understanding your financial goals better when we interact to you on a one-on-one session. So without much ado, let's start with this presentation. I'll request somebody to confirm to me if my screen is visible.
Yeah, the first slide is. Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Content of today's session, we'll be talking about what is global investing relevant, what are the inherent risks involved, how can I. We're going to cover in the next 45 minutes, and we'll keep the please stay tuned into this presentation as well as the content that we on the scene engaging. We'd love to hear from you, from all of you. So let's get started. Slides to interpretation of these 2 slides. Slide, we are talking about the left-hand side is the time. So on 23rd of March 2000 last year, the COVID-19 was declared as a pandemic by WHO. The Indian markets fell down by 13%. They market havoc on that day, and it was a pure phenomenon in his latest movie, as well as by the Harshad Mehta scam had caused and elders talking about how they lost money during this sort of a market crash in 1992. Over to 2008, on 24th October 2008, Lehman Brothers collapse had wreaked havoc and had caused a ripple effect into global markets, causing the Indian market to crash by another 11%. Another two recessions on 12th of March and 16th of March. Two more crashes by the US financial crisis in 2008. And one last Indian phenomenalization when our Prime Minister Modi declared unfit the Indian currency note, all of our holding in our wallets, and the markets had fallen by 6% in a single day. Over to the right-hand side, all these phenomenons have been shown in a graphic presentation, and you can see that from 2015 to 2020, the markets fell with various percentages. So the first was the Chinese market crash in 2015. 2016, we saw demonetization. The market started recovering, and they had recovered over here when the GST, when demonetization again caused a collapse. Then happened the Brexit announcement, and markets fell again. The GST reform, when it was brought into the Indian markets, and it was a very sudden event, again caused markets to collapse. The in 2016 was another shaking event in the market. The markets soon started rising, and we saw the IL&FS scam in 2018. Another scam in 2019, when Maharashtra RBI had taken over the bank to manage its assets. And lately, in 2019, we saw the COVID-19 pandemic again affected the Indian markets. So this was a graphical representation of the various collapses from 2015 to 2020. Over to the next slide, we will talk about global volatility during a decade. So in this color-coded chart, we can see the returns which have been offered by various countries globally, that the Indian markets, the US markets, the Chinese markets, Japan, Taiwan, and the APAC region. The returns are color-coded, and returns are arranged in a descending order from 2019 to 2009 to 2019. And this 10-year representation for the entire history of the returns offered by these countries. Let's say that in 2009, India was the highest performing country, 103% return, whereas Japan was the least performing country, 6% return in that year. Over last year, we have a record in this chart. In 2019, Taiwan was the highest performing country with an 80% return, and the ASEAN markets and India were the least performing countries in the region. If I have to summarize this chart for you, the summary is easily available in the last two columns. So the last two columns show the annualized returns over a 10-year period and the average annualized volatility over the year period. And it's clearly visible that it was the US markets had offered the highest returns in over a 10-year period, and US markets had shown the least amount of volatility in a 10-year period, whereas China and India were the most volatile countries, and they had the least returns over a 10-year period. And over the next few slides, I'll talk about what is global investing and why is global investing relevant. So moving on to the next slide, before I ask the interpretation from all of you, what is investing? A global investing is a strategy where my investments are not constrained by geographical locations. I can now invest into stocks which are actually not available to me for investing in India. It permits us to invest into stocks not available for investing, and it allows us to diversify investment across multiple geographies. So this is global investing, which is very understandable from the term itself. Over the next 4 slides, I will give you 4 reasons as to why global investing is relevant. But before moving on to that slide, I would like to ask from all of you, what could you interpret from the first 2 slides that I showed? That is the crashes in India and the global volatility over the past decade. What do you think is the interpretation of these 2 slides? And why does it make a strong point for me to invest into the global markets? If you could please write in your answers in the chat box, and Preeti, if you could give me the answers, that would be great.
Sure, ma'am. Not receiving a response.
So I repeat the question once again. I showed these 2 slides for the stock market crashes in India and the global volatility during the decade. If you'd have to tie these 2 slides together, what would the interpretation, and why does it make a strong case for you to invest in global markets as visible from these 2 slides?
Ma'am, we have a response from Ms. Seema. She said, market across the world are generally linked together. Impact in one place will impact another. And am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. And there is one other response from Ms. Sneha Sehgal also, that market crashes have regional impact, which is why it is important to invest in global priorities.
So Neha seems to be very close to the mark, that the regional impacts are definitely linked to the market crashes, and why it becomes important for me to invest into global markets. Thanks, Neha, for that very, very close answer. Let's give 4 reasons as to why investing into global markets is relevant. The first and the easiest answer, that it allows us to invest into global and MNC stocks which are not available for investing into India. So if I want to invest into an Amazon or a micro Google, these are companies which have not only survived, these are companies which have thrived during the pandemic years, and we do not see many competitors in next 50 years. These are very financially strong companies, and these are companies which we use day in and day for our living. We cannot think about a world where we don't search on a Google. We cannot think of a world where we do not use Microsoft Meetings to interact with each other. We cannot think of a world where we are not ordering from Amazon. So why not invest into these companies as well? The second answer, which I was asking you about, is that global investing offers a geopolitical diversification to me, and it helps me in reducing the overall risk of the portfolio. I'll tell you how. So the first part of this is that the portfolios, when I invest into global markets, the portfolios don't react strongly to local market shocks. Imagine a scenario where I'm invested entirely into the Indian market, and there is India-China LEC face-off, which is happening on the borders. We're still at a very precarious situation when it comes to the Indo-China interaction. We're still having the 12th round of talks with the Indian generals and Chinese generals with no concrete resolution of disengagement. So tomorrow, if God forbid there would be a war on this side, or with Pakistan left inside, we will inevitably see a market collapse in India, and our portfolios will react strongly if I'm entirely invested into the Indian market. Let me show you a corollary of this as well. So if I am invested in global markets, and global markets performs well, then my portfolios will also perform well in response to the favorable events which are happening internationally. So when you look at the second picture, it shows $1.9 trillion stimulus package which has been released by Joe Biden in November 2020 to revive the American economy. And with this stimulus, the American economy is in a place to absorb the surplus pent-up demand which is being created post the lockdowns being lifted. Case in point are companies like Lyft or Salesforce.com or bookings.com, which are enjoying the pent-up demand which is being created post the lockdowns being lifted, and people want to travel more for their leisure visits, their business trips, and are utilizing these companies heavily. So when they're utilizing these companies heavily, stocks are improving, the stock prices are improving, and naturally has an impact on the global securities that I would have invested in. So if I were to have a certain percentage of my portfolio invested into the international markets, invested into the US markets, my overall portfolio is not only going to reduce the risk, it is also going to improve in terms of the return I could generate because of the good performance of these specific international stocks. The third reason that global investing is so relevant is that global markets have low correlation with each other. So Indian markets and US markets and the European markets do not move tandem with each other. Rather, what is visible from the picture on the right side, you see the correlation between the Indian markets and the US European markets. The first column shows that US markets had a negative correlation with Indian markets. They are not moving in the same direction, they're moving in the opposite directions. And if the US markets are performing, the Indian markets are not performing very well, the probability is high that the US markets will perform very well. Similar is the case with European markets, again a negative correlation. So if the Indian markets are not performing well, probably the European markets will perform well and vice versa. So it makes a very strong case for me to invest into the global markets and reduce the overall risk and improve on the returns. The fourth and final reason for me to invest into global markets is the US dollar and INR depreciation. So, fun fact, on 15th of August 1937, when India gained independence, one US dollar was actually equal to one INR in terms of the currency exchange rate. Since then, the Indian national currency has been depreciating year on year, as on date stands above 70 rupees for a dollar. So, the INR currency has actually depreciated by 13% in the past 5 years. So when I am investing into the global markets, I'm actually investing in INR, which is converted to US dollars and then is invested into the international markets. So the net return that I get is the performance or the return of the global stocks added with the INR depreciation factor. So if the global markets are giving me a 15% return and the INR depreciation factor in year on year, the net return I make is a 20%, which is definitely an added advantage over investing in pure Indian equities. I'm sure you would have become very excited by the concept of global investing by now, but before jumping into the global markets, it's important to understand the inherent risks as well. Equity hai to risk to hoga hi. So global markets and global equity is equity after all, and any equity is subject to volatility in the short term. So over 1 year, 3 year, 5 year period, you will see a lot of volatility. You will see ups and downs. You may even see the markets, you will see your portfolios giving you a negative return. But if you are prepared to see that sort of a return, understand that after 5 years, volatility in the equity markets tend to get ironed out and then gives you a good return. So equity as an asset class has outshined any other asset class, whether it's real estate, whether it's gold, whether it's fixed income in the history. So if you look at the graph on the right, you can see that over a short term, so this graph starts from 2002 and goes on till 2020. You can see a lot of events happening. The dot-com bubble collapse in 2001, the US housing bubble in 2005, global financial crisis in 2008, Greek crisis 2001, China's slowdown fears in 2005, most recently the coronavirus outbreak in 2009. Each and every global event caused the global equity markets to crash. This happened over short term. So when you look at this short term, lot of market crashes, another short term, lot of market crashes. But when you see the long term history of global markets as well, one thing is very clear, that these are only moving, they are only moving in the upward direction, not in the downward direction. So if you are prepared to keep yourself invested for at least 5 years, let's say from 2007 or slightly longer way, from 2004 to 2009, you can see the market only grown upwards. If you are looking at a long-term horizon, 2002 to 2020, you can see the markets have risen from a value of 100 to a value of 400, which means when markets reward those people who are investing into equity for the long term. Now, this is a classic example of what happens or how do people react whenever there is a market crash. This graph is going to show you 3 lines. The green line represents those people who withdraw in the market crash. The blue line represents those people who withdraw but then try to re-enter the markets, and then deep blue line represents what happens to returns when people stay invested before, during, as well as after the market crash. So whenever there is a market crash, in spite of the fact that history is available to everybody to see the returns that one has made when one has stayed invested or has invested in during a market crash, in spite of that, there is a region in our brain called the amygdala, which sends out stress, causes us to react whenever there is a market crash. So whenever we see a bloodbath happening in markets, we tend to react wrongly, and our behavior is sometimes representative of that. What happened? I would like to ask from all of you that during the last few market crashes that have happened, maybe during the pandemic in 2020 when COVID was declared as a pandemic, or prior to that if you invested during the dot-com bubble collapse, how did you react during these events? What was your reaction? What was your investment strategy? Did you withdraw? Did you remain invested? Did you withdraw and did you step back in? How did you react? Preeti, if you could monitor the chat box and give me the answers, please.
Sure, ma'am. There is a response from Mr. Deepen Gandhi that panic was there, but he stayed invested. And same response from Ms. Neha Sehgal also, that she remained invested.
So that's great if the two of you have decided to stick to your asset allocation strategy in spite of havoc around us. But I have seen a lot of investors, especially during the last year, got a lot of calls when people were worried about the market crash. Most of these were panic calls where people wanted to immediately, oh, I don't know what's happened to my money. My portfolio is showing a minus 20% return. I want to withdraw immediately. I want to stop SIPs. And this is the common consensus. This is the common feelings that investors display. They're happy with when the markets perform. When the markets are not performing, they want to immediately withdraw. But that's the worst possible strategy that anybody can display. That is stopping the SIPs when the market crashes or withdrawing. So this is evident in case of the returns that people have made when you withdraw from the market. Green talks about withdrawal during a market crash. So the investment started from over here, and there was a market crash here, and investments were withdrawn. And because the investments were withdrawn, there was a flat line in terms of the returns, and the only returns were available through the fixed deposit or bank account savings. If a person decided to withdraw during the market crash, and if they try to step back in, this is also a common strategy that people ask me about, that, oh, markets are constantly falling, let me withdraw, let me book the profit that I've already made, let me save my portfolios from further deterioration, and let me try and step back in as the markets recover. So that's also a bad strategy. Here you have to time the market for 2 important points, and you have to be very precise in timing these conditions. That I have to withdraw from a high point and then I have to get back at a low point. But that never happens because timing the market so is impossible for anyone. So if I withdraw, the markets are at a low, I am missing out on the opportunity of my investments to recover should the market start rising again. And secondly, I wait and watch for when markets will rise again. What happens interestingly is even though markets are recovering, they are led by a lot of false negatives. So the false negative is that during a large market recovery, markets are correcting themselves by a couple of points in every day, and then they are still going in the other direction. And we tend to be misguided by these false negatives, and actually not the case. We wait, and then we get into the markets when they're and now I am getting into the markets at a point where there is a significant loss in the upside, where the markets have already recovered and the upside is fairly limited. So this is what happens. The person withdrew over here and then stepped back into the markets as the blue line starts. And then this is the trajectory of returns that the person has made. Significant loss of opportunity. And the deep blue line represents the person who has stayed invested in spite of market crashes before, during, and after the market crash. And look at the this person has made. So you can see the significant loss in opportunity, blue line for the blue investor and the green investor when they withdrew and when they stopped selling and then tried to step back again. So the best possible strategy to make in the case of a market crash is to remain invested until and unless your financial goals have been achieved. The presentation, that is, how can I now invest in global markets? So there are two common methods which are available staying in global companies. One is the feeder fund method and the second is the intermediary account method. In the feeder fund method, I'm investing into the global stocks through the mutual fund method. So here, as an investor, I invest in INR into the feeder fund, which is existing in the Indian market. This feeder fund is then investing into the master or the parent fund, which is located in the global market. And then the global funds investing into various stocks which are present in the global market. The second method is the intermediary account method, where I open an account with my local Indian bank. I open a bank account. I also open an account with an intermediary between the Indian markets as well as the global markets. So, for example, HDFC today has a tie-up with StockAl, ICICI has a tie-up with Axo Bank. There are certain more a common intermediary name of IND Money. These are various intermediaries. So this method asks me to open two different accounts, one with the Indian bank and the second one with the intermediary, which then asks me to invest into the global stock. I'll talk about both of these methods and which do we recommend. In the feeder fund method, now there's one markets, one in the global market. So your whose only job and whose business financial security as well as the more to pay and drop stocks as per their performance. So this involves fund managers. The fund managers diversify your stocks, your portfolio across 50 to 100 stocks. They are constantly churning portfolios as per the market conditions. Churning means buying and selling of the stocks as per the market dynamics. This method also gives you the advantage of long-term capital gain taxation through the advantage of indexation, which means that if I am holding my equity, global equity mutual fund for more than 3 years, I get a better taxation benefit. This taxation benefit, if I am holding them for less than 3 years, I will be taxed at 30% tax bracket. So I'm assuming over here that most of you are in the 30% tax bracket. So if I am holding them for less than 1 year, taxation of profits is 30%. And if I am holding them for more than 3 years, the taxation on the profits reduced to 3% post-indexation, which boils down to around 10 to 12%. There's a huge difference in the taxation amount the moment I hold my funds for more than 3 years. The second method, which is less popular, is the investment in the global intermediary method. Here, as I mentioned, it involves the opening of two different accounts, one with the Indian bank, the second one with the intermediary. Secondly, since I have to choose the stocks on my own, it requires a high stock picking acumen. So I have to be extremely experienced in the markets and I have to understand not only the financials of the balance sheet of the companies, but also the market dynamics, which sectors or which themes are the markets favoring currently. This method also involves a high amount of transaction charge. So whenever I'm investing into stocks, each and every transaction will be subject to a transaction charge, irrespective of the amount that I'm investing. So if I don't have a lot of money to invest into the global stocks, if I'm making a transaction worth 1,000 rupees, my transaction charges will in itself be more than 1,000 rupees, which can make the entire solution highly cost ineffective. Next, this sort of a method also subjects my investments to the US capital gain tax structure, which in itself is not only more complex, but also less friendly than the Indian taxation structure. Moving on to the final slide. So the Edelweiss US Technology Equity Fund of Fund is one of the flagship funds that we have recommended for investors from 2020. The fund was launched in the Indian markets on 14th February 2021, fine Valentine's evening, and since then we've been recommending this to our investors. I'm not going to be talking about the returns of these funds. The returns have surpassed our expectations by a huge margin, and please do not sell into the global markets for the reason of the returns. There should be a strong rationale, and the rationale has to be the reduction, global diversification, reduction of your volatility, and in returns portfolio. So let me share a short conclusion prepared by Edelweiss Asset Management Company for this fund. It's going to give you a fair idea of the sort of stock picking that they do and how do they invest into the global markets. Preeti, if you could please confirm to me whether the video and audio both are there.
Visible as well as audible.
Yeah, that brings to the end of the session. We'll do a quick recap from here and we can move the question and answer session. I'll request the entire audience to put in as many questions as they have. We have a lot of time to answer a lot of questions today. Please put in your questions to the chat box and Preeti will help me in moderating the same. Before that, a quick recap. Why global stocks, global mutual funds? Because they help us in investing into companies which are not available to us in India. They help us in mitigation of the geopolitical risk. They offer a low correlation with the Indian markets. They help in hedging the currency risk through the US dollar and INR appreciation. That is, even though the INR is constantly depreciating, in spite of that, my portfolios will continue to give me a better return because the INR appreciation now gets added to the global stocks performance. What are the various risks involved? One broad risk involved, which is the short-term volatility exists in any equity class. How can I invest into the global markets? One, I can invest by creating an offshore account through an intermediary. And secondly, I can invest in global markets through the feeder fund method. So thank you everybody for attending this, and we can move on to the questions and answer session. Preeti, could you please let me know if there are any questions that have come in the chat box?
Yes, ma'am. Few questions were already answered in the while in the session. Still, I would like to read the questions so that clear understanding be there. So, there's a question from Ms. Neha Sehgal ki, what is the reason of inverse relationship between global market versus Indian market? And she also wanted to understand how does direct funds fall? Say example, clear funds there is there. So, what is the difference between investing through direct fund or a regular fund?
We'll go one by one. So the first question that you asked, what is the reason for the inverse correlation? So the inverse correlation between the two countries are guided by various geopolitical, not just the geopolitical factors, but also the sort of economies, the state of the economies that we have. So the developed markets naturally have a developed economy, have risen to $10 trillion already in terms of USA, another $5 trillion, which China has already crossed. So the fact that the developed market, the GDP is at a very, very large stage. Our country is still at a $3 trillion. We're looking at a growth trajectory. The GDP growth rate for the US economy is fairly limited at the moment. US markets are growing at maybe 0.5 to 1% rate, whereas we expect it to grow at an 8.5% rate again in the next financial years. So these political factors, these economic factors in itself is the inverse correlation between the two companies. So we've done a research over the past 10 years. It was clearly found out that the correlation which was there was entirely negative. I can see one question in the chat box. Tax implications. Are we taxed at sale or at award? So the answer to this question is that we are always taxed on the profits that we generate, never on the capital. So if we are invested and there is a notional profit which we see, on paper, we will not be taxed on that. We will only be taxed when we decide to book those profits and come out of those investments. Whatever profits have been generated, we will be taxed on that amount. Tax India or the invested country. So if you are going through the global mutual fund method, the taxation implication will be entirely Indian. You will be subject to the Indian taxation laws. But if you are investing directly in US stocks or international stocks, the intermediary method, not via mutual fund, your funds or your investments will be taxed as per the US tax laws. And third is the indicative tax rate. So in Indian economy, if we are holding the investments for a less than a year period, your profits are most likely to be taxed at a 30% tax rate in case you are in the 8% tax bracket. And after 3 years, we'll get the benefit of indexation. So my tax rates will come down to a 20% post indexation, which is approximately a 10 to 12% figure. The next question that Seema has asked is, what is the safety of global funds given my investment is all outside the country? Okay, so the important thing to note over here is that your entire portfolio need not be put into the global market. So I am a firm believer in the Indian growth story. Why we ensure that at least 70% of the investment in our portfolio is into the Indian markets only. Considering the fact that we're growing at still a 6.5% GDP rate, we are expected to deliver 8.5% growth in the next year. I have to ensure that the largest percentage of my portfolios is into the Indian markets. As an investor, is to have an investment of about 10 to 30% into global markets, depending upon their risk appetite. How much is the apt percentage of global investment is available, is apt for you? This is something that we include through a one-on-one financial planning session. Should we connect on that? So ask that what is the safety that global funds offer? So one example that we had recommended in terms of our flagship is Edelweiss US Technology Fund of Fund is investing into nearly 100 stocks which are broadly large cap in nature. One, they are large cap in broadly large cap in nature. Two, they are investing into stocks which have a very large addressable market. So they are not investing into stocks which are niche, but investing into large cap stocks, companies like a Lyft.com, large competitor to Uber, like a company called NVIDIA. I'm sure all of you will be aware of that. It is a semiconductor development company, and their drivers are being utilized for softwares and in computers. And we're talking about companies like Salesforce.com, one of the biggest CRM development companies in the world. So companies that have a large addressable market, companies that do not have a very big competitive. There is no large competition which is seen in the next at least 50 years to come. So these are the various factors that offer stability to these funds. And I would also like to highlight a sort of track record that the global fund has shown. So the Edelweiss US Technology Equity Fund of Fund is actually investing into the JP Morgan Global Equity Fund. The JP Morgan US Technology Fund has been there in the US markets for the past 30 years with an excellent track record. So if you were to go online and see the returns over the past 30 years have varied between a 20% or 40% annualized. While there have been negatives as well in certain calendar years, but as I said, equity is always a volatile asset in the short run. Over the period of 5 years, the returns have always been more than 15% in any given calendar year. So the history of these 3 decades and the stock pickings that they do is clearly indication of the sort of safety that these funds offer. And if you are only investing a small percentage of your portfolios, it would ensure that my entire portfolio is not subject to any sort of a global impact that country may face at any point of time. So that's the safety indication. Preeti, you had talked about one more question which I could not see in my chat box. If you could please repeat that.
Sure, ma'am. Actually, the question was what is difference between investing directly through direct fund, like difference between the direct and regular fund we invest.
All right. So the difference between the direct and the regular funds is that in a direct fund, there is no advisor who is attached, who is advising you. And in a regular fund, there's always an advisor attached. So naturally, there is a cost implication which comes into the picture. When you are going through the advisory method, or if you are investing through a regular fund, the expense ratio, which is the cost of investing, becomes slightly higher. The cost of investing is the fee which goes to the distributor as well as the marketing, because there's an advisor who's involved, who's responsible for advising. There's slightly higher cost. The only difference between these two methods is the sort of cost which is involved. There's about a 0.5% differential in terms of the costing in both kinds of funds, the regular as well as the direct. Having said that, the role of the advisor comes into the picture when you've been invested in there a certain degree of time, and now you have to take a call whether to come out of the fund and whether to get into other different kinds of funds, because market dynamics have changed. So research has shown that over a 5-year period, when there is an advisor involved and when there is no advisor involved, advisor-based fund methodology through a regular, in spite of the fact that there's a higher cost structure involved, the advisor-based method has been able to give you a 2% incremental return through a regular fund methods, because now there's a professional involved in terms of seeing the market dynamics and in terms of churning your portfolio. So it's not always that you leave your portfolios, you invest and then you completely forget about it and you let the market do its job. No, over different kinds of times, different market capitalizations are favored. Large middle cap or small caps are favored. Different sectors, different themes are favored. For example, infrastructure has largely been performing over the past 1 year due to the pent-up demand as well as the performance production-linked incentives which have been launched by the Indian government and causing a lot of FIIs to invest into India. So infrastructure becomes a very strong theme for us to invest in this year. So this sort of a market knowledge and acumen is something that can be displayed by the advisor, and this is where they add value in terms of the returns as well.
Ma'am, there is one question regarding how about investing in ETF or versus direct investment into stock of global market.
Sure. So when we talk about an exchange traded fund, an ETF, please understand that what is an ETF? ETF is an exchange traded fund. It is a passive fund in nature. So that means there is no fund manager involved in utilizing his knowledge in order to make changes in that fund. So that exchange traded fund is a mutual fund in itself, which is present on the market exchanges for trading, and they are blindly copying the benchmark. So a benchmark, for example, the small cap benchmark or the BSE benchmark has certain stocks with a certain percentage allocation into those stocks. What an ETF fund does is it blindly copies that that sort of stock capturing as well as the performance. It will not give an incremental over the benchmark. So when you're coming into the equity market, the intent is to make money. And if you're invested into the large cap stocks or any sort of a benchmark, you'll get a standard return. For example, the Indian large cap benchmarks have delivered about an 11% return over the past 10 years, delivered a 40% return in the past 1 year. So if I introduce my investments to a fund which are blindly copying these benchmarks, I don't make an incremental over the benchmark. And my intent to come into the stock market is to actually make money. So by investing into a mutual fund, which is actually not in nature, it is active in nature, or by investing directly into stocks, I am increasing the return probability of my portfolio. I'll give you an example about this. So till about 5 years back, Yes Bank was performing very well. It was an excellent performing bank in the economy, in the banking segment in India, and the stock prices were also substantially high. It was a good example of the growth in the banking story of India. And since it was a large cap, it was captured in the benchmark with a heavy percentage allocation. All of the ETFs and all of the passive funds were also holding this particular stock, Yes Bank, in them as per the market holding of the benchmark. Now, the moment Yes Bank fell, the moment there were problems in the company, the moment it was overtaken by RBI, its performance, the stock market's prices fell drastically to below 10 as well. Now, because I was invested in a passive fund, by the nature of investing into a passive fund, I had to hold this bank as well, even though it was a very volatile stock at that time and I did not know the future of that stock. So by virtue of investing in the passive fund, I had to hold that Yes Bank in the portfolio and be subject the negativity around that stock as well. But if I were to invest myself into an active fund, there was a fund manager involved, the person would have been able to foresee the sort of problems which are coming in Yes Bank, and I would have actively pulled out Yes Bank from the portfolio, thereby safeguarding the profits that you had. So that's the example that's the difference between an active and a passive fund. An active fund is a fund manager involved utilizing fund knowledge and market knowledge in order to actively take calls for churning of the portfolio and safeguarding of your portfolios as well. So my recommendation on investments will always be an active fund or the active stock advisory, active stock picking method. If you are a beginner in the markets, if you are just about investing into mutual funds and also do not have the sort of time, bandwidth and acumen to stocks, pick up the mutual fund method for investing into global markets. You think you've gained a stable amount of experience as well as stock picking acumen. You know how to read balance sheets. Go for the direct stock method, but bear in mind it involves a large amount of transaction charges. It involves hassles like owning 2 different accounts, and at the same time is subject to the US market or international taxation laws.
There is 2 more questions which are similar in nature. So they want to know how to invest in global stock market, and can you give a little brief once again on both the methods with example?
All right. So first of all, Ash has asked us how to invest into global stocks. We talked about 2 methods. The first method is the mutual fund method. So mutual fund method is basically the feeder fund method. I am investing into a full fund which is present in the Indian markets. That fund is called the feeder fund. That fund would then invest into the global fund or the parent or the master fund which is available in the international market, and then that fund would be investing into the global stocks. So all I have to do is put and buy certain units of mutual funds or global stock, it's a global fund. So I'm so sorry, the domestic fund which is available to us in the Indian market, and the rest they could get by the fund manager. Second way or method for investing in global stocks is through an intermediary method, where I first of all have to open a Demat account with my bank, and then I also have to open an intermediary account. So there are 2 accounts which I have to open, and then I have to allocate money into my my domestic account which I'm holding with my local Indian bank. I have to decide upon what stocks to buy. That money will be converted to US dollars. The amount of equivalent US dollar holding will be shown into your account, and then you can decide to pick up the stocks. a good reason to pick this method, or one advantage of this particular method, is that you don't necessarily have to buy one particular stock, which may be very, very expensive. You can even buy a small fraction of that stock with whatever amount or whatever surplus you invest. So this is the way of both of these. These are the two broad methods for investing into global stocks. The best method for us is to invest through the mutual fund method.
Thanks, ma'am. The last question which I have in my things is that Mr. Shashank asked, on what ground we should judge which US tech or global fund we should go for? What parameter we should look upon?
Right. So there are.
I'll answer that question. So, tie up with Shalini, invest with Shalini, and let her take care of funds. Is a better way, because honestly, we did not have the kind of time to read and understand. I mean, of course, there is the interest level that all of us should have, but she is a professional. She is sort of fund. They understand money market. It's like, what is that 2.5% change in the market can impact your short-term terms. So my sincere request, I'm not selling the internet to anybody, but I say that don't you partner with and give this, and as you make money, I certainly you will acquire skills of the game and you can move ahead. So over to you, Shalini, your answer.
Right. Thanks for that kind answer. I am not a funder, no, I am only an advisor. Yes, it is my responsibility. It's my fiduciary responsibility to explain to you market dynamics. We do not really recommend to you. We definitely use strong rationale to what certain funds are suggested to you, and we will ensure at least what your 6 month passion is hit with you on your portfolios and on market dynamics, in order to explain what is going on, why is it going on, and at that sort of interest level, we'll definitely make it a primary to you, those kids, about understanding the dynamics behind those stocks, about understanding the stock picking methodology. So yes, we'll request you to speak to us on a one-on-one financial seminar, your financial goal, if you do it invested through global markets. If I merit our research methodology and what we have to say, and the sort of returns that have delivered for investors, that will be one reason for you to connect with us, allow us to manage your investments. Okay, two more questions have popped up. One question is Ramesh. The last, how to read stocks for global companies like debt ratio, EPS, and cash flow operates. Basically, talking about the fundamentals, the technicals of past questions as to how to decide stocks, to decide on a mutual fund is the technicals and fundamentals. When you look at fundamentals, we look at the performance, the returns that have been delivered, the vintage of the fund, the asset management category that the fund is in. And when we look at the technical side, look at various ratios, include alpha incremental funds being able to outperform benchmark, beta is the volatility, if fund would have displayed standard deviations, quarter ratios, sharp ratios, and equal ratios. These are various technicals which are compared for at least 50 different international mutual funds that we have in the markets at the moment, and then to inclusion the various funds. This all on the mutual side, and questions more on the individual stock picking side. So individual, when you look at the companies, mutual funds are invested, large cap companies, and they are all listed companies, and financials are in public domains. It's a very want website and search for financial, you will be to see that. So if you have all this background and accurately finance stocks, you can easily see the profit loss in the balance and figure out all the ratios, debt ratio, equity ratio, cash flow, which are there. Then there are websites which analyze the specific factors that we're talking about. They're able to give you audited figures of cash flow from operations and investments, as well as financials, as well as the net outflow cash flow, and multiple ratios, including down to equity, return on capital, and debt to equity ratio, and earnings per share as well. Once you do connect with us, once we'll be able to give you more clarity on what are sites, how can you go on, and how can you find out these financial ratios for yourself. Okay, one last question has come up from Gandhi Pain is about thematic investment in global markets like crypto, electrical vehicle, etc. So the sort of funds that we're recommending at the moment on international markets are non-thematic in nature. These are either stocks or on US tech. The US technology is actually the thematic, the only sectoral stock that I recommend. This is the merit as shown in the past decades. All of the other funds which are there investing into global and are also non-thematic or non-sectoral. So we do not recommend thematic or sectoral funds because we believe that the sort of risk on the carry with them becomes a very strategy which is best towards the market without bias towards it, or team works best for invest. So we currently do not have any specific sector or thematic funds which are investing into crypto or EV. But if you talk about the technology stocks that's talked about, Edelweiss US Technology Fund, they are heavily investing into Tesla, which is the market leader in electric vehicles. Currently do not have funds which is investing into crypto.
Right. Well, thanks once again. I think we are almost the end of the session here, almost to a noon. So thanks once again, Shani. Thank you, the audience, for being very patient listener and for all the questions. I hope these 3 sessions have been informative and helpful to all the participants. Hopefully we can do more sessions like this in future as well. Thank you again, Ingenitus team, Shalini, Preeti, and the rest of your team. I don't know if Vishek is also on the call or not. The link for connecting with the Ingenitus is a chat window, and I think that will continue. So in case you wish to engage with them in an independent one capacity, please do so, or I can always make the connects. I have now recorded all the sessions. I'm going to put all the links together and send them an email for anybody who wants to go through them. So this has stopped recording, and we can move to the session. All right. Thank you.
Really happy to connect with Microsoft in this in a privilege. Been honored to speak to all of the employees, especially on the one-on-one sessions that I've had. There has been a response model. I was low when I saw my child, people wanted to be.
In this session, and let's hope that we can do more of this in